Okay, 95%. Just sit with that number for a second. According to some pretty massive research, 95% of people absolutely firmly believe that they are self-aware. But here's the wild reality of it. When researchers actually tested them, only about 10 to 15% of people actually hit the mark, which means on a really good day, 80% of us are basically lying to ourselves. We are quite literally just walking around in a complete state of self-delusion. So I've got to ask you a slightly uncomfortable question. Are you one of them? Seriously, let's try a little mirror technique here. I want you to picture the most cluelessly delusional person you know. Maybe it's that coworker who genuinely thinks he's this brilliant presenter but literally puts the entire room to sleep. I mean, we all know one, right? Or maybe a boss who constantly brags about being so approachable but secretly terrifies her entire team. You got him in your head? Okay, now flip the script. Is it possible that you might be that exact person to someone else?
Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us today because we are going to completely shatter this massive myth of self-awareness. We're going to break down exactly what it really takes to see ourselves clearly and why it is, honestly, probably the single most absolutely crucial meta-skill of the 21st century.
To do this, we're diving deep into some phenomenal source material, Dr. Tasha Eurich's book, Insight. Now, Dr. Eurich is this brilliant organizational psychologist, and she spent 4 solid years leading a massive empirical research project. And she didn't just study everyday people. Her team specifically hunted down what they playfully called self-awareness unicorns. These are those incredibly rare individuals who started out completely oblivious, but somehow made massive, game-changing improvements to their self-insight over time. We are going to figure out exactly what those unicorns know.
To keep us on track, here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the delusion epidemic. Number 2, internal versus external awareness. Number 3, the 7 pillars of insight. Number 4, the power of perspective. And finally, number 5, alarm clock events. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, the delusion epidemic, the myth of self-awareness.
Okay, let's dive into this. We live in this incredibly me-focused, totally self-esteem-obsessed culture. We're just constantly being reminded of all our wonderful, special qualities. But honestly, that just breeds a kind of blissful ignorance. It is way more tempting to see ourselves through rose-colored glasses than to face the cold, hard truth, right? But here's the thing. The cost of that delusion is absolutely staggering. Did you know senior executives who lack self-awareness are 600% more likely to completely derail their careers? Take a guy from the research named Steve. Steve was this abrasive construction boss who fancied himself a real visionary. He thought he was just, tough but fair. Well, the reality? In just 16 weeks, his toxic behavior caused 3 people to outright quit and put a 4th person on blood pressure medication. No joke. He was a complete tyrant, totally oblivious to his own behavior. Delusion has massive real-world costs.
Section 2, internal versus external awareness. The 2 faces.
Let's build on this a bit, because true self-awareness isn't just sitting around navel-gazing. It actually requires a really delicate balance of 2 totally distinct viewpoints. First, you've got internal awareness. That's knowing who you are, your passions, your core values. But then you have external awareness. That is knowing exactly how other people see you. Now, naturally, you would probably think that if you were super in touch with your own feelings, you'd automatically be a pro at reading how others see you, right? Well, actually, wrong. The research revealed a wildly surprising fact. These 2 traits often have absolutely no relationship to each other whatsoever. Sometimes they even work inversely. Like, you can be totally obsessed with your own inner world and yet be completely blind to how you're coming across to everyone else at a dinner party.
Think about internal and external awareness kind of like the periodic table. Internal awareness, all on its own, is a lot like hydrogen. It's highly volatile. External awareness alone is like oxygen. It just fuels the fire of self-consciousness. But when you combine them together in the right proportions, bam, you create life-sustaining water. You literally need both to create a powerful force for success.
Section 3, 7 pillars of insight, the anatomy of awareness.
So the researchers found that self-aware people actually possess a very specific anatomy of insight, something unaware people just simply lack. And every single one of these 7 pillars is a critical piece of the puzzle. They are values, passions, aspirations, fit, patterns, reactions, and impact. Let's zoom in on aspirations for a second. The book tells this great story about Ben Hump. He's the highly successful entrepreneur behind the I Can Has Cheeseburger network.
Now, Ben was totally obsessed with this massive checklist of ambitious goals. But one day, during a lunch meeting, an investor looked at him and said, "Ben, the goals aren't important. What's actually important is the process of getting there." And it hit him. Ben realized his true aspiration wasn't just checking boxes off a list. It was about actually experiencing the world with the people he loved. He literally stepped down from his role to travel the world. Now that is true aspiration insight.
But let's deep dive into another one, an absolutely crucial pillar: impact. Impact is, very simply, the effect that your behavior has on other people. The book highlights a frantic manager named Eleanor Allen. Eleanor was sent down to Puerto Rico to try and save this failing water infrastructure project. Well, she immediately jumps into crisis mode, right? She starts firing off dozens of incredibly stressful, demanding emails to her team every single day, and things just got worse and worse. Finally, her deputy, Evelio, literally bursts into her office, slams the door behind him and says, "You have got to stop. You are driving us crazy. You're the one who's going to get us fired." Eleanor was completely blind to her impact. Her emails were just breeding resentment, not productivity. You see, impact isn't what you intend to do, it's what the other person actually experiences. Now, to her immense credit, she stopped, she pivoted to building face-to-face trust instead, and she totally turned the project around.
Section 4. Power of Perspective. Stepping outside yourself.
So how exactly do people like Eleanor learn to actually read their impact? How do they develop that external awareness? How do we literally step outside of ourselves? Well, Dr. Eurich shares this incredibly actionable technique from psychologist Richard Weisbord, and it's called zoom in, zoom out. She actually used it herself once when her flight to Hong Kong was suddenly canceled. She was furious, obviously, and marched right up to the gate agent, Bob. Okay, step 1 is to zoom in. She took a second to recognize her own feelings, her anger, her hunger, her total frustration. Then step 2 is to zoom out to the other person's perspective. She literally stepped back, looked at Bob, and realized the guy looked absolutely terrified. So she just asked him about his day. Bob confessed he was forced to come back to work just to deal with a mob of 500 furious passengers. By zooming out, she completely calmed her own anger and built some true empathy. That right there is external awareness in action.
Section 5. Alarm clock events, catalysts for change.
Okay, so how do we get there? How do these self-awareness unicorns actually wake up from their delusions and start building this incredible meta skill? Well, the research uncovered 3 main catalysts for change. Think of them as alarm clocks that just shake us awake. Step 1 is new roles or rules. Step 2 is earthquakes. And step 3 is everyday insights.
Let's anchor these with some real stories from the source. Taking on a new role, like getting a huge promotion, that stretches your comfort zone and forces you to adapt. Pretty straightforward. But what about an earthquake? Well, there's a story in the book about a woman named Susan. She was working grueling 70-hour weeks in real estate, constantly snippy under the stress. Then, boom, she was abruptly fired. That massive earthquake forced her to face some really hard truths about her emotional reactions. But listen, it doesn't always have to be some huge dramatic event. The everyday insight can be just as powerful. Sometime after she got a new job, Susan was moving into an apartment and got into this ridiculous massive argument with her friend over stacking plastic cups in front of glass ones. I mean, we have all had those totally pointless arguments, right? But mid-argument, she actually heard herself and thought, wait, why am I having this outsized reaction to something so incredibly unimportant? That totally mundane moment revealed a massive hidden pattern about her own need for control.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. What alarm clock is ringing in your life right now? Are you stepping into a new role? Did you just go through an earthquake? Or is there a completely mundane, everyday moment trying to teach you something about your own hidden patterns? Self-awareness isn't just something you're born with. It's a muscle. You have to actively build it. So wake up, look for your catalyst, and start building your insight today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time as we continue to unpack the ideas that shape our world.